Welcome to Pressing Issues. Today is Sunday, August 30th, and welcome everyone who's watching. We have over 100 people who have been waiting since before we started, so that's great. Thanks very much for tuning in. I'd like to welcome my panel here today. We have Axel, everyone's favorite.
Good evening.
And we also have Eric.
I'm just here to support the campaign. Good evening, everyone.
Everyone's here to support Axel's candidacy. For what, I don't know. Rob as
well.
Yeah. Yes, I was out in the sun a bit today, for people who are asking. Anyway, we have a packed show for you tonight. We're going to talk about all kinds of things. I think let's get started with talking about Halloween. So, interestingly enough, it's August 30th. Usually, Mickey's Not So Scary Halloween Party has already started by now. But in this year, with all of the crazy pandemic things that we're dealing with, we've got no Mickey's Not So Scary Halloween Party. But instead, oddly enough, Disney is allowing adults to wear Halloween costumes, which has not happened for a number of years. So, interesting. What do you guys think about that aspect?
I have my Tinkerbell costume ready to go, wings included.
Wow.
I mean, it's a nice thing to do. So I'm not sure if a lot of people are going to get in costumes, go to the park. You would see it happen on a not so scary night, that people just come to the park during the day and then they stay through the night and they come in their costumes. But even if it's September, it's still freaking hot outside. And I don't know if people are going to want to dress up and be in the park the whole day, because you're going to be at the park at the hottest time of day. Park is going to close, at 6 when this all starts? So it's not that there will still be sun. Is it 6 or 7 now? I get always confused.
Yeah. I mean, either way, the sun's going to be out. So yeah, you've got, I mean, that's sort of one of my thoughts, is that it takes, it takes a lot of the Halloween fun out when you don't have the lights at night and the fog machines and stuff going. So you're basically just walking around Disney World with a costume on. You don't really get the Halloween vibes if it's not dark out. So, and as you said,
Halloween?
Go ahead. Yeah, who feels like wearing a Halloween costume?
Feels like getting dressed in a Halloween at 9 in the morning.
Right. Yeah. I mean, certainly, back when the parks were open more hours, you could go in the morning and then you would go back to your room and change into your Halloween costume and come back, around dinner time. But parks close around dinner time now, so that's not really super efficient unless maybe you're at the Contemporary or something. But yeah, so I don't know. I mean, it's always fun to wear a costume to Mickey's Not So Scary Halloween Party. For most of my visits, I think it's more fun to see other people's costumes. But sometimes wearing your own costume is a bit unwieldy. I once dressed up as a Radok block. That was quite unwieldy. And I had to abandon that costume after the first 3 hours of the party. But anyway, yeah, so I mean, I think it's nice that they're trying to keep the spirit in the season, at least. They're going to put up decorations for Halloween, which is a good thing. Letting people dress up is a good thing. Obviously, all the Halloween merchandise is coming out now. But I guess without the park being open after sundown, I really think you're kind of missing a lot of what makes the Halloween time at the Magic Kingdom special.
Well, and especially like I looked it up right now. It's 9 to 6. When you go to a park and there's some, I mean, there's definitely days that don't have to be like an evening or a nighttime event where you go dressed up. Think Dapper Day, Adventureland Day. Is it called like that? Well, the adventure costumes and all that stuff. Yeah.
Yep.
So you go dressed up, and then like we did it. But that's like for this one day, and you know it, and I'm not gonna go to the park the same way than I would go to a park as I would regularly do. I would really like take and kind of have this outfit on, which is not made to run around the whole time, sweat myself to death, and then run from one place to another. So you're gonna enjoy the park on a different level. Something that, I mean, definitely, why not? If you want to get spooky, but the thing that is missing for me is they didn't elaborate more. They didn't talk more about the options you would have if you would come like dressed up. Is there a special Halloween style restaurant that they want you to get there? They could easily turn, I don't know, the Crystal Palace into a Halloween restaurant theming without the characters, or even with the characters from a distance. They do that at Topolino as well. But have an option for the people who come, who take the time to get all dressed up, to get those costumes on. They won't wait an hour to go on Splash Mountain in their Halloween costume. At least I wouldn't do so.
No, right, exactly.
No.
I mean, the people that go for Adventureland Day and dress up, they'll ride Jungle Cruise, but they're not going to go on Splash Mountain or Space Mountain with their outfits on. So, yeah, no, I agree totally. And I think, they're, on the one hand, you can't expect them to do a lot more because it's not the hard-ticketed event. But on the other hand, yeah, like Crystal Palace still isn't open. They could certainly open Crystal Palace for some sort of Halloween meal thing or whatever. I think that's a good idea. I mean, you upcharge the meal, that would certainly cover the expenses. So it's kind of like, I think there's more they could do, and I don't know what the sort of thinking is behind, not doing more things that are sort of special. I mean, they're kind of doing some things, but not others. And is it attendance? Is it money? I don't know.
I think this is a really small segment of people that are really going to want to do this anyway. It's hot. You're already having to wear a mask. You have to wear a costume all day long. So unless you're staying at like a monorail resort or, if I'm not going to burn a park pass just to come there in an afternoon and walk around in a Halloween costume. I mean, maybe that's just me. I just don't think that it's that big a deal for that many people. I think people are going to just write this year off and go, okay, I'll come back when I can have a little bit more fun with this. And I don't have to be so cautious. I don't have to wear a mask. It's already hot. Wearing a costume all day seems kind of, I would feel pretty silly wearing a costume around all day, to be honest, and especially it's light out. It's one thing if you're going to the Halloween party and you have kind of a group and you want to do something where you're all dressing in a costume or with your kids, but all day long, heat of summer, wearing a mask, social distance. I don't know. It just doesn't seem to work. I don't think you'll see that many people taking advantage of this policy to allow Halloween costumes.
Well, I think the reason they did it is for you like, especially I follow a few people who have great ideas on Halloween costumes, and I follow them on Instagram, and you see that every year they come to Florida, they come to the Magic Kingdom for a not so scary party, of course, but also to show off their costumes of that year. So I think they just wanted to give the opportunity and say, like, if you still want to come and then have your Halloween vacation, we will let you wear your costumes. We're not going to take that away from you. And I think that is the only reasoning behind it, because there's no why would you wear a costume? It's not an evening party. There's no meet and greets. And I mean, a selfie from a distance is not the same as a meet and greet. So I'm not sure what the extra value is for me as a guest to come in my costume. What do I get in return? I do think that it's a nice opportunity for people who are great at Disney bounding to come on with something original, like your regular park loads, but then Disney bounding. I think we might see more of that than actual costumes.
Yeah, and some people mentioned that in the chat too, which is for the most part probably what I would expect too, to be honest. I mean, if I have any kind of elaborate costume, I'm certainly not wearing it during the day. And by the time it cools off in the evening, the park is closed. All right, let's move on to our next topic. So there was a press conference with state and local officials in Florida talking about park capacities, and basically what came out of that was that the government in Florida is essentially saying that the parks are doing a good job, and they are willing to allow them to increase capacity somewhat. Now, at this point, we don't know what exactly capacity Disney's operating at, and we don't know what capacity they might ramp up to, but as we saw, you know, especially with Shanghai, they started out at a really low capacity, and then they ramped up after a couple weeks. So here it's been, what, 2.5 months at this point, or no, month and a half at this point, for Disney, and 2.5 months for Universal, almost 3 months for Universal, and Florida is coming out and saying, you know, they're willing to allow the parks to increase capacity. Now, first of all, there's a couple things here. One, and I've said this pretty much every episode. One is that I think the parks are doing a great job in terms of safety, in terms of social distancing, in terms of mask compliance. And I've said this before, I think probably the parks are one of the safest places you could go in Florida, as long as it's not a jam-packed weekend. But you know, a standard park day during the week is probably safer than most grocery stores. The question, and I know Eric mentioned this before we started, he mentioned this to me, that it seems on weekends, either capacity's higher on weekends, or maybe it's just more closer to the max. You know, during the week you're not hitting the max capacity, but on weekends you are. We saw some pictures from Epcot today where there's the queue to enter the land and ride Soarin', and you know, there's a queue to get in the building, and then once you're in the building, there's queues to ride Soarin' and Living with the Land. It was pretty crowded. I mean, people were socially distant. I didn't see any significant issues with social distancing, but it's crowded. If you try to, you know, I mean, if you want to get in line to ride Soarin' and the line starts essentially at the bottom of the hill outside the pavilion, that's got to be a pretty long line, even with the social distancing, because they're running three theaters for Soarin'. That's a lot of people. So it does seem to me that I think the parks are definitely more crowded on weekends. That's not a surprise. The question in my mind is whether they are still under the same capacity level as weekdays, and just weekdays aren't filling up, or whether weekends are actually a higher capacity level than weekdays because the demand is there. And so, you know, that's kind of the $1 million question. I mean, like I said, we still don't have any idea what capacity Disney's operating at out of their, you know, target capacity. So,
and Jason, it could be a combination of those things too. So the capacity, in my opinion, the weekends were just on the edge of maybe being not quite uncomfortable, but they were getting closer than previous weekends. So I went to Epcot last weekend, and I would say it was a long haul just to get into the park. If you got there, I think we got the park open 11. We got there maybe 11:30ish, in between 11:30 and noon. They were holding people at the gate at the parking entrance. They were holding people at the temperature screening and basically waiting for the front of the park to clear out. They'd send people in groups. So that's not necessarily an indication that the park was overcrowded. But what I saw throughout the day as I was walking through the park was just a little bit. Epcot's a large park, so you don't really expect in this time that we're having to have so many crowded and cramped areas. There were long lines at times. There was a line just to get into the Mexico Pavilion. I didn't see that problem with the land, but in general, I saw not only more people, but more people that were disregarding social distancing and having to be reminded, which I did see some cast members reminding people. I did see people totally ignoring the audio instructions, which are pretty much all day long to, if you're going to eat or drink, walk off to the side and remain socially distanced and stationary and remove your mask while you're actively eating or drinking. I saw people ignoring that and walking right down the center of the walkways, eating, drinking, no mask on. Even though I think Disney's done a fantastic job in terms of health and safety, like you said, if you're going to go in public in Florida, Disney's about as safe as you're going to find. But I don't think there were definitely so many people there that they would have to have an awful lot of cast members there reminding people to do this. I didn't feel like the police. I didn't feel like shouting at someone to put their mask on, but there are people that I'm sure will, and knock on wood, we won't have violence in the parks. But I did see it. It felt to me like it's starting to slip away, not from Disney, but just kind of from the general consciousness of people who are maybe having fatigue of this whole thing. And people were just not taking it as seriously as they were even 3-4 weeks ago.
Yeah, the other thing that people are saying in the chat, one of the biggest problems when Epcot starts to get crowded is the Mexico Pavilion, and La Cava had their anniversary the other day or something, and there were so many people they had to close the pavilion due to capacity, which meant people who wanted to go ride Grand Fiesta Tour couldn't, because of all the people waiting in line to get into the tequila bar. So in terms of, crowd control, that seems like a pretty poor situation where, you've got families that want to go on rides, and there's not that many rides at Epcot to begin with. Test Track was down for half the day today. And then, there's a nice Mexico boat ride that's indoors and air conditioned and
I wouldn't say nice, but there's a Mexican boat ride.
It's a nice boat ride. You be quiet.
Okay.
But plus not a long wait, and you literally can't get in the pavilion to go ride it. I think La Cava has been there a long time, and
11 years as of yesterday, right?
11 years. That it's been there a long time, and it certainly has its fans, but it's to me it's too small of a place, and it's too crowded, and it really sort of overtakes the pavilion in terms of people going in just for that and not for the ride. And to me, it's kind of a shame that people can't get on the ride because there's too many people waiting in the marketplace area to get into La Cava. So that's something that I really think they should have a way better to address it. Maybe like split the line outside of the pavilion. Like the land, for example, there was a line outside the pavilion, and then once you got inside, it split for people that wanted to go to Soarin' or Living with the Land or just go to eat. It would be nice if they came up with a way to split the line outside of Mexico so that the line for La Cava could be on one side, and then people could still go in the pavilion and go on Grand Fiesta Tour if they wanted to. Sure, because you were there today, right, Kevin?
Yeah. So they are somewhat doing that with Mexico. they will ask people who are close to the end of the queue to get into the pavilion what their destination is. If they're going to La Cava, they may hold them there because that's a much shorter line. So they will hold them there. Generally, they'll let people through who are going to the ride. Not always. I mean, it's kind of like if you think about when Tower of Terror is looking for a party of 2, they'll go 20 parties deep in asking. So if there's a bunch of people waiting for La Cava, it may hold things up, but they do kind of independently track where those 2 lines are and let people in accordingly. So it's not quite as cut and dry as chat maybe made it sound, though that could change when it gets super busy and La Cava is just what 90% of people want to go to. That's going to change the scenario.
Sure. Well, these are design issues with these pavilions, right? Because you have to go indoors in these pavilions to be able to access anything, unlike Norway, where the line for the Frozen ride can be out around the bend, and you can still go into the shops or the other indoor spaces. Same with, I think, pretty much every other pavilion except the land, right? So, kind of makes sense.
Well, yeah. I mean, most other pavilions, have multiple entrances.
And I mean, it's not because the government lets you have, allows the capacity to go up, that Disney has to follow it. I mean, depending on the day, when you're in Hollywood Studios, I'm like, it's on the border for me to still be comfortable. Although everybody is wearing a mask and that's all good. But I'm not sure if even more people right now would be a good way to go. On the other hand, it's still having your physical distance, having people respect the rules. I think Disney does a good job on reinforcing those rules, but also, how can I put this really nice? There's decent people going to Walt Disney World. This morning, I turned on the TV, and on the news, there's a report of a 17-year-old boy that was working at, from all places, Fun Spot, who got his jaw broken.
No. Here we go.
because he asked someone to put on their mask. That kid, 17 years old, working at Fun Spot, jaw broken by a guest that was refusing to wear his mask. And that boy just did his job. And I mean, that's something that, okay, there's been this one case that security handled before they even got into the park in Disney, but it was handled. But that poor kid, I mean, it tells you a lot about the crowd that Disney still has. And I think Disney has a very respectful crowd, not always, but most of the times. We're getting there with Universal. It's not always great, but still, they do what they can. But then the other parks, even for SeaWorld, it's very on the border. And then you go to Fun Spot or places like H2O water parks, and I mean, that's where you hit the bottom of the barrel, breaking somebody's jaw because they just tell you, please wear your mask for my safety so that this place can stay open for your enjoyment, and you break that kid's jaw, then there's something wrong in your head. And I don't know what, but you should be banned from entering any theme park again.
Well, I mean, you should be arrested.
And you should be arrested, but banned. I mean, how long will you stay arrested? Okay, arrest him, that's one. But then there's a ban, and you won't enter any theme park again. That period.
Yeah.
I just assume that if you're going to Fun Spot, you've already been banned from everywhere else. If you're going to Fun Spot, you've already reached the bottom of the barrel at that point.
That or you just need a change from SeaWorld, one or the other, I don't know.
Yeah.
But, I mean, that's really similar to, like airlines will ban people from ever coming on their airline again if they won't wear a mask. So, yeah, I think there needs to be more significant penalties for people. I mean, there's a rule, you follow it or you leave, and that's basically the way that things work. And people that don't like that need to stay home. I mean, they're not forcing you to wear a mask in your own house, so stay home if you don't want to wear a mask. It's just, and I think that's the way things are.
For Disney, with upping the capacity, I mean, you will only have an even more crowded feeling in the weekends, because for now during the week, almost every park is available. Then you see availability of just pop on for annual pass holders. But if you're a resort guest, you're staying at a hotel, or you just have your day ticket, there's no problem whatsoever to get into the park. I can't recall Universal being at capacity, and that's besides Volcano Bay. So you can say like, okay, you can add more capacity to your parks. The question is, will people come? Because it's not, and again, besides the weekends, it's not that the parks are full during the week.
Right.
Not even that. It's the other way around. Like last week, we talked about hotels closing, and then parks like Volcano Bay closing 2 days a week. It's getting worse now with Cabana Bay or any hotel at Universal. What is it, like 1,000 jobs like away, just gone away?
Yeah.
Those hotels.
And I think even if you say you can now go up to 50% or 60% capacity, if the people don't come, it will not change a lot.
Doesn't matter,
because there's still,
that's right.
There's still capacity. Like that won't change.
And I think that's what we're seeing with parks during the week versus on weekends. I think that's what we're seeing. I think the weekends are where they're hitting the capacity, whatever the level is that was set. During the week, they're not hitting that level. And so it feels more crowded on weekends. But in any case, if the weekends are hitting capacity and they feel pretty crowded, then I don't know that we need to increase capacity anymore. Because I think at some point it just gets to be too crowded. And on weekends, it's getting to that point. There's enough people that social distancing is difficult. The more people that are in the parks, the more people, just as a percentage of the people in the parks, the more that are there, the more there are that aren't going to follow the rules. And with the same number of cast members enforcing the rules, you're going to run into problems like that. So, I mean, you've got a lot of issues to deal with when you increase capacity. It's not just, it's just getting more people in the gate to spend money. It's that if you don't have the concomitant increase in cast members to manage the crowds and things like that, then it's going to become problematic. And like Axel said, I think now with school starting, now's why we're really seeing this difference. Certainly in June and July, when the parks first opened, weekends were a bit more crowded than weekdays, but not significantly so, not like they are now. And so, yeah, I think because schools are opening, people are not able to go on weekdays anywhere near as much as they could, last month or the month before. And so you're seeing a very, very significant difference between weekdays and weekends in the parks. So much so that they can close Volcano Bay for 2 days a week just because the demand's not there. So I think this is kind of most of this is not super surprising to me. It's kind of what I would have expected. It doesn't surprise me at all that Volcano Bay is closing 2 days a week because the demand's not there. Plus, it's getting to be the fall season. I mean, it's still hot right now, and it probably will be for another 2 months. But, getting into November and December, it's not going to be as hot either. So, even then people aren't going to be going to Volcano Bay as much as they do during the summer, whether it's a weekend or not. So, I mean, those all issues are sort of things that I expected to happen, and they just kind of are happening. It'll be interesting. So, I have a trip booked over Thanksgiving, coming down the Tuesday before Thanksgiving and stay until the Monday after. And initially, I tried to book, because I'm a DVC member, I tried to book DVC. There's no availability at DVC. Any DVC resort, there's no availability for a studio anywhere on property. So, and I know that DVC capacity and occupancy doesn't translate to the rest of Disney. And I know Thanksgiving is kind of one of those things where a lot of DVC members come and they don't go to the parks. They just stay at the hotel or, go to the parks one day or something. But it's going to be real interesting to see when we get to this first holiday season, big holiday weekend, because we haven't really had that. I mean, 4th of July, Disney wasn't open yet. There wasn't any fireworks or anything at Universal. But now Thanksgiving is going to be the first big holiday period after school has started, where people are going to be ready to go and head to the parks for a bit of a vacation. So it'll be interesting to see what happens.
Jason,
Thanksgiving weekend.
With DVC, everybody is trained, drilled as a DVC member, that if you want to go a certain time in the year, for those who know what DVC is and how it works, first of all, you have the 11-month window. I mean, that's December of last year. Nobody knew anything. And then you have the 7-month window where you're, depending September, March, just before everything was happening. So people say, okay, I'm going to book it. And right now, they are allowed to cancel their trip upon one day before, and it can still remain. They still have all their points. They're not being banked. So you can still use your points. So I think people just don't know what's going to happen, because Disney is terrible in communicating, and they just keep their reservation, and they say what do we have to lose? Even if I cancel it already, at least I'll have my reservation, and if I don't want to come 2 days before, I can still cancel it.
Then you can.
So I still want to see, until we get there, I want to see how many people are really going to be there, and what. So it's something that you should put on a list for a future episode of pressing issues when we're there, and then Thanksgiving time, that we can talk about this and say there wasn't any availability. All those people came. It was horrible. Or people just canceled. And then there was plenty of availability, but last minute.
Yeah, and so it'll be interesting. I mean, I have a reservation booked at Pop Century. And, that's obviously something I could cancel if DVC availability opens up. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. So we had a question in the chat. DVC, normally the DVC cancellation without penalty is 30 days, but now that's been waived because of the pandemic, so you can cancel up until the day before. It'll be real interesting to see when DVC starts to re-implement these cancellation deadlines again, because you're right. I kind of didn't think of that. I mean, I kind of thought, Thanksgiving's going to be crowded, but it does make sense that with a different, with the non-typical cancellation policy, that maybe people are just hanging on to those reservations and are going to wait and see what happens. And I mean, that's three months away. A lot could change in 3 months too. So it makes sense to hang on to the reservation, especially if it's all booked and you can't get it back. If you change your mind, you might as well keep it.
It will be interesting to see what happens in with their inventory in a year, provided there's some sort of large reduction in cases or a vaccine or something, because there's a lot of people sitting on their DVC points, right? I'm a little surprised that there's no availability, but in a year and a half, there's going to be it's going to be like the Hunger Games. Trying to get DVC availability. Everyone's going to be stuck at Saratoga Springs. Yeah.
We talked about this quite a bit. We had a DVC specific episode like a month and a half ago now, where we talked about this quite a bit. So I think there is going to be people are banking their points like crazy. But then DVC went in and they still have this in place that you can't borrow more than 50% of your points. Normally you could borrow all of next year's points. They put a restriction in that says you can't borrow more than half of next year's points. I don't know why. I mean, I know why they did that at the beginning, because availability was so limited, but I don't know why they're doing that. I don't know why they haven't rescinded that now, because certainly other than Thanksgiving, DVC is not at capacity, and they're going to have a glut of points on their hands to spend next year. They ought to encourage people to borrow their points and book right now and go right now and spend those points right now, as opposed to wait until next year. Absolutely. I totally agree.
And once the cruise line opens up, I'll bet people they'll be like, hey, well, I can't get a reservation at Disney World, but I can get a cruise. And then suddenly, cruises are going to have a lot of competition.
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't know if cruises are, not sure where we're getting all that feedback from.
Is someone calling on a walkie-talkie?
Something like that.
Sure.
Cruises are kind of an interesting thing because, you can exchange DVC points for cruises, but it costs a heck of a lot of points, although people still do it all the time. I honestly think that, Disney somehow incentivizing people to exchange points for cruises is one way that they're going to be able to utilize to get the number of points in circulation reduced. They kind of have to. That's one way they can do it. Yeah. They make an enormous profit when people do that anyway, so to give people a bit of a discount in order to do that, I think they're going to have to. I think there's going to be so many points in circulation next year, they're going to have to incentivize people to do something with those points other than spend them on hotels at Walt Disney World.
Honestly, I know there was a whole episode. For me, DVC could have only done one thing, and it was contacting all their members and saying well, we don't know what's going on. You can now add your points to the end of your contract and just push them all the way to your end of the contract. And you can choose if you want to do that for 1 year, 2 years, or 3 years. So you wouldn't be able to use any points until 2023, but you would have 3 years added to your contract because hey, it's the problem in 20 years and we'll figure it out. But at least they would have seen less inventory right now, less problems. Plus, with Reflections being canceled, with Reflections not being talked about anymore, that was a way to go. With Reflections, there would be more points, there would be longer years. Now they don't really have anything except Alani that they're going to sell for the coming 30 years. But that's about it.
The other problem with Reflections being canceled, this is one of the biggest things. We should have another DVC episode at some point in the next month or so. The biggest problem with Reflections being canceled is that was going to bring on more capacity at Walt Disney World, and thus somewhat mitigate all of the people that buy points at Alani because that's the only thing that's available, but then never go to Alani and spend them all at Disney World. That was me until 3 weeks ago that I bought my own points at Vero Beach, and I'd never been there until 3 weeks ago. We just used them at Walt Disney World all the time. So luckily Vero's pretty small and it gets booked up. But Alani is huge. There's so many Alani points around, and Alani is not, booking itself to occupancy. It's half full or whatever. It's not open now, but Reflections was going to take some of that mitigate some of that problem where you have Aulani points being used at Disney World, but not the other way around. So I'm kind of upset that, although if Reflections was going to cost like 89 points for a, one bedroom or like a one closet, 2 bed thing like Riviera was, it might not have helped either too much, but, we'll see what happens.
On the other hand,
yeah.
For everybody in the chat who is thinking about buying DVC, we just looked at the resale prices. Whoa, you can really get a bargain if you want to buy DVC right now. I mean, it's not, this crisis has not like folded itself onto houses or even like condos, but on DVC points, ooh, you get some good deals if you want to buy points right now.
Yeah, you absolutely can. There's enough people. I mean, they're not like crazy deals, but they're $5-10 a point better than they were a year ago for sure. There's plenty of people selling points and renting points too. I mean, that's when Tom has been staying in resorts for the past month and a half now. Doing all these resort tours, but really just to get into the parks. A lot of his stays have been at DVC. Some using my points, some using points he rented because it's pretty cheap and there's availability. I'm just looking at the chat. Yeah, Disney. Rob says Disney's offering an incentive to buy Bay Lake direct, which is kind of surprising that they have enough Bay Lake inventory to do that, but they might be targeting people that already own points at Bay Lake. I don't know. I haven't seen that incentive come across. But yeah, I mean, I think so. Like I said, I have Pop booked for Thanksgiving, and Pop was like $205 a night, so it was kind of cheap, honestly. But I'd certainly rather stay at a DVC resort than Pop. So we'll see what happens. Oh, Rob says he talked to DVC last week when he was there. Okay, great. Somebody wants a 30-second summary of how DVC works. Okay, I'll do this. I'll do this best as I can in 30 seconds. Someone time me and tell me when to stop. DVC is like a timeshare, except you buy points. You buy points instead of weeks, and then you can spend the points at any DVC resort. So each year you get an allotment of points. For me, for example, I get 300 points a year that I can spend on room nights at any DVC resort. Old Key West starts at 8 points a night in the low season for a studio. The Polynesian bungalows go for like 125 points a night. So you have these points, you can spend them any way you want. You get this allotment of points every year for the length of your contract, which is until in 2040 or 2060, depends on when you bought. So that's how it works, but it's it can be a pain when you're going at a pretty high season like Thanksgiving. It can be a pain to get what you want if you are doing like this would be a last minute trip. 3 months out would be a last minute trip as far as DVC goes, because if you don't book 11 months out or 7 months out, it's kind of hard to get. So. Penguin Project. I've been a DVC member since 2000. So, yeah, it's been a long time. Certainly got my money's worth in the past 20 years, though, that's for sure. Yeah, DVC at Poly and Copper Creek, I mean, especially Poly, there's so few rooms and everybody wants Poly because it's a great location. I mean, it's kind of a problem. Bay Lake Tower is easier to get into than Poly for sure. Grand Floridian's not hard to get into. There's a lot of rooms at Grand Floridian, but also the point costs are pretty high. So, all right, let's see. So yeah, there's if there's enough interest in DVC, we can certainly have another DVC focused pressing issues episode, maybe in a couple weeks or something. Always a lot to talk about with DVC. A lot of facets, a lot of people interested in how things work. Renting DVC points, like I've rented out my points and stuff before, but now I pretty much just rent them to Tom. Okay, so what else? What else is on our list of things to talk about?
Splash Mountain.
Jason,
talking about Splash Mountain?
Yeah,
Jason, I looked at the clock when you stopped talking about Halloween, my absolute favorite time of the year, and it was 9:13. We spent like 13 minutes. It was a very spooky time to talk about Halloween, but there was a few things that we didn't mention. Like there's going to be Halloween cavalcades. There's the characters are going to wear their Halloween costumes, things that wouldn't be happening in a normal time because you had to pay for it to see them.
It'd be only the parties. Yep.
Yeah. So I mean, there's some good coming from it. I'm not saying it's the best, but I was honestly afraid that we would have nothing. I mean, with the cavalcades, it's easy to change the cavalcade out and say, like, okay, now we're going to send out some Halloween-themed cavalcades. But still, it's nice that they do so, and that there's still like this Halloween vibe. I know nothing will replace Mickey's Not So Scary, and I loved those evenings, although they were freaking expensive. But still, I mean, it's nice that at least they do something.
Sure.
After what happened in Disneyland Paris, with 2 shows now being canceled, I don't think that anything near a Halloween show was considered, and good for that as well. But still, I think it's nice that they do the cavalcade, that they do like the characters. I mean, there's a step towards the Halloween fans, the Disney Halloween fans.
Yeah, no, I agree.
I personally like the cavalcades. I hope they stay. Sorry, that's a little off track.
No,
I just like the cavalcades. I like that they're not so regimented, and they're kind of like a little surprise that pops up in the park. They walk by, you get to see your characters, and you go on about your day, as opposed to, all these people lining up and having high expectations and arguing with each other and all this stuff. I think they're great.
Yeah, no,
and I think it's great for Halloween.
I think I would love to see the cavalcade stay and the 3:00 parade essentially go away, because I think the cavalcades are more spontaneous, they're more fun. You don't have to line up hours ahead of time because they happen multiple times a day. It's essentially it's almost a parade with a lot less of the hassle of a parade. The issue, I think, when things get closer to normal again, is that there's always people in those streets. So the cavalcades can happen now because it's easy to shoo people out of the way as they come down the road. But on a packed day in the Magic Kingdom or in Epcot, that's going to be almost impossible to do. So at Animal Kingdom, on the other hand, they're on the boats, which I think is fantastic. That's a great idea to have them on the boats at Animal Kingdom. And those, I think, could certainly stay because Animal Kingdom doesn't have a parade anyway anymore. So it would be nice to have those stay at Animal Kingdom. I think that would be great. But I think there's enough logistical problems with crowds at the Magic Kingdom and Epcot that, unfortunately, I think only in these times of reduced attendance are we going to see the cavalcades. But yeah, I love them. I think they're great. I certainly... I was never a big parade person except for nighttime parades, so I would rarely stand around and wait for a daytime parade. But the cavalcades, I will definitely stop and watch them when they come by because I think they're neat, and it's easy enough. I don't have to plan hours in advance. I don't have to stake out a spot or anything. So yeah, and having the Halloween cavalcades is absolutely going to be something nice, because normally you would not see those characters in Halloween costumes unless you went to the party.
Very true. Plus, about Halloween, I don't know if everybody has seen the Madame Leota sipper. If you don't, go check it out on the website, wwnt.com. I mean, that's the item I want to go for. The popcorn buckets, the beignet thing that they're going to put in a popcorn bucket, whatever, are the same as last year. But that Madame Leota sipper,
that's cool.
Jeez, who doesn't want that?
Absolutely cool. Yep. Yeah, that's got to be one of the coolest sippers I've seen in a long, long time.
Yeah, it's something that people are going to line up to get. Unfortunately, it's something you're going to see appear on eBay really quick. But still, I mean, it's nice that it's there. And I do think, I mean, like, in all honesty, something like this isn't made 2 months in advance. This isn't made 5 months in advance. They knew a long time before they wanted to make these. And I think they made an amount that more people could get their hands on than we see now during the pandemic. So I do think that's my hope, at least, that they won't get sold out after a first day or two, but that everybody who goes throughout the month of October and even longer will still be able to get that awesome sipper.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. It certainly isn't a limited edition item, so hopefully they're going to be able to accurately predict that this is going to be a super high demand item, and people are going to want it. So hopefully there's going to be enough. There's going to be enough for everybody who wants one. Which, I mean, there's still going to be eBay resellers, but certainly. And to some extent, there's always going to be eBay resellers, because there's going to be people that are Haunted Mansion fans that just can't get to the park. So they're going to buy them on eBay. But hopefully the fact that there's tons available is going to mean that, at least on eBay, it's not a ridiculously inflated price. Let's talk about one thing, because it's rant time.
eBay resellers?
Well, not exactly, no. But it's rant time, and then we're going to take a commercial break. I rant about the eBay resellers a lot of time. No, here's what I want to rant about. There's a lot of things that happen in the Walt Disney Company where one part of the company has no idea what the other part of the company is doing. And they come out with announcements, and they say things, and then it's totally, like, completely ignored by the other half of the company. So example number one, and Tom harps on this all the time, example number one is that when Disney came out and said that they're going to retheme Splash Mountain to Princess and the Frog, they said, oh, well, we've been planning this for over a year. But then they still come out with all this merchandise. There's all this new merchandise, Splash Mountain things. If they were going to retheme Splash Mountain, they wouldn't be coming out with all this new, like, 30th anniversary merchandise. But they claim they've been thinking about it for a year because they don't want to look like they're giving into public pressure on any little thing. So they claim they've been planning it for a year, but I don't think that's the case. But now that they've said it, now they're taking the Splash Mountain music out of the music loops. There was a Hallmark ornament, Mickey playing a xylophone Hallmark ornament this year that they pulled at the last minute, and a few of them got sold, but they've been pulled off the shelves and recalled, and they're on eBay for hundreds and hundreds of dollars now. I managed to get one, by the way. If people want to see it, I'll bring it on the show after the commercial. But so, like, I mean, it's, that things just don't don't make sense. Like, it doesn't make sense that you say, oh, we've been planning to retheme Splash Mountain for over a year, and then you come out with a Splash Mountain ornament for 2020, and then you decide to recall it late in the game after it's already been made to some extent, and some have gotten out there. That doesn't jive. So, the Disney company does this all the time. Their communications is terrible. But the example that I wanted to rant about today was not the Splash Mountain one. It's the Minnie Mouse main attraction stuff. So I've ranted about Minnie Mouse main attraction and the Merch Pass before, but Disney said when the parks reopened, or at least when Downtown Disney reopened, Disney came out and said, look, because of social distancing guidelines, we're not going to release any of this merchandise in the parks or in Downtown Disney at World of Disney. We're only going to release it online. And that lasted for like a month and a half, and then there was some Minnie Mouse main attraction stuff that randomly showed up, what was it, like a couple weeks ago? And then just the other day, some more of it, the Dumbo stuff, the Dumbo ears just randomly showed up at Mouse Gear, I think. It's kind of like, if they're going to make an announcement that it's all going to be sold online, and then it shows up at the parks, it's just kind of like their credibility is so damaged at this point because the left hand doesn't know what the right hand's doing. And I don't know, like, every Disney fan in the universe heard the announcement that they're not releasing limited edition merchandise in the parks, but yet some shows up in the parks, and the people that entered the Merch Pass thing and didn't get picked are all pissed off. And then it just shows up in the parks. Like, what are they doing? How do people that run the merchandise end of the company not get the message that limited edition stuff is not supposed to show up at the parks? I don't know. The problem is that most of the time Disney communication is pretty poor, and that's best case scenario. Worst case scenario is that it's just flat out wrong, which in this case they said they weren't going to release stuff, and then they did. So it's, and yes, somebody in the chat just said the Black Cauldron magic bands ended up at the parks. I don't even think they were online at all. There were only 500 of them. They just put them out at the parks. So there's plenty of limited.
Yeah, but they said there were only 2,200 of the. They said there were only 2,200 of those Orange Bird Flower and Garden magic bands.
Magic
they clearly
bands
had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds more.
It's like they found another 20 cases somewhere and didn't know about it, which honestly has happened. I've seen that happen, where something that's been sold out for weeks, they get another case in, and then a bunch more comes. If Disney's going to come out and make announcements, at least make sure that everybody's on board and everybody understands, so that you don't look like a complete moron after the fact when you make an announcement and then you turn out, you basically, another arm of the company proves you wrong. It's kind of like, why even bother? They should have just kept their mouth shut. Do what you want. I mean, that's kind of what they do anyway. They do what they want, whether they make these announcements or not. So making these announcements essentially just ruins their credibility, what little bit they have, because nobody knows whether to believe them or not is the problem. So that's my rant for today. It's kind of absurd that this Minnie Mouse stuff, people don't get it selected in the Merch Pass, and then, hundreds of them just show up in the parks. Like, where are all these people? The Merch Pass was supposed to distribute this fairly in a lottery fashion. How do they have hundreds more to just show up at the parks out of nowhere when all these Merch Pass people that signed up the way they were told to do it and didn't get picked and are now upset, and now it's at the parks, which is going to be, scooped up by the eBay resellers? That totally defeats the purpose of the Merch Pass system. And then in addition to this, they just tossed a whole boatload of this Minnie Mouse stuff from the past 3 or 4 months. They created they tossed a whole boatload of it on Shop Disney randomly Wednesday afternoon. Like, what was what about all those Merch Pass people that didn't get what they wanted? Like, they can come up with these things that look to be like technological solutions to a problem, but they implement them so poorly that it just exacerbates the problem. Like Rise of the Resistance boarding groups is a technological solution to the problem, but they implemented it so poorly, and they continue to implement it so poorly. Like today, they didn't even release the boarding groups because there was some snafu on the back end. Like, they have these technological solutions which theoretically should work and on paper look like a good solution, but they just do such a crappy job of implementing it and rolling it out that it turns out to be no better than what they had before. So anyway, that's my rant for at least the first hour for today. We're going to take a commercial break. We're going to come back. We're going to talk about some other stuff. What I don't know. I can't remember what my mind is bad today. What else we were supposed to talk at? I need to go look at what Kevin wrote. The continued cast furloughs. We haven't talked about yet, so that's another thing that I'll probably get ranting on about. But we're going to take a break, so stay tuned. We'll be back after some messages, and I'm going to go grab one of those Hallmark ornaments because people in the chat said they wanted to see it. So stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Hi, everyone. I'm Cosmic Chris Reed. Inviting you to join my co-hosts and I every Monday at 9 p.m. Eastern on WDW News Today as we chat Disney park memories, food, and Imagineer our own attractions, restaurants, hotels, and more. Share your stories with us in the YouTube chat. Plus, listen to WDWN tunes at the same time to hear some Disney park music paired with the show topics. Cosmic Read Live every Monday night at 9 p.m. Eastern on WDW News Today.
4 panelists, 30 minutes, 1 week in Disney Parks news. This is Parks Center. On Parks Center, the panel and I cover the top 7...
7?
Yeah, 7 Disney park stories of the past week. From attraction news to transportation scandals to new food and merchandise, we'll cover it all in 30 minutes or less. You can watch us stream live every Wednesday night at 9 p.m. at wdwntunes.com. Watch episodes on demand at youtube.com/wdwnt, or subscribe to the audio version of the show on your favorite podcast app.
Dreamfinders is WDW News Today's podcast all about the creative culture surrounding Disney parks. Authors, Imagineers, dancers, actors, photographers, filmmakers, and a whole lot more have all stopped by to chat about how Disney has inspired their artistic work.
But I still remember sitting in conference tables and looking across at Michael and Jeffrey Katzenberg and this sort of little 6-year-old inside of me going, what in heaven's name is going on here?
And we're off and running, and Tony needs someone to lay it out for him. And there's no architect available. So the next thing I know, I'm laying out the Pavilion.
I got to tell you, I have not enjoyed a podcast so much. It's just a warm conversation, and warm and intelligent conversation, which you don't find that often in podcasts.
Dreamfinders. Episodes drop every other Tuesday on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcatcher.
WDW News Tonight is our weekly comedy show combining the news of the week, comedy segments, thoughtful discussions, insane characters, parody commercials, games, and more. Watch live on Thursdays at 9 p.m. and become a Wigs member to get access to a bonus post show. Watch WDW News Tonight episodes anytime and live on YouTube, or get the audio-only version on iTunes and other podcast services.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to Pressing Issues and to our second hour here tonight. We're having a good time talking about all things Disney, Halloween, and merchandise, and park capacity. Before I forget, so you saw the WDW News Tonight episode. If you haven't heard, WDW News Tonight is coming back. October 1st will be the start of the new season after our summer hiatus. So everybody's getting geared up for that. I know I have a trip planned to come down so I can be there in person in the studio for that. I know I have a trip. Somebody's audio's echoing. So that will be... that will be fun. And yes, I think Axel will be there. So News Tonight, October 1st. Mark your calendars. Anyway, but right before we left, we talked about the Hallmark ornament, so I want to show people the Hallmark ornament. Here's the box for the Hallmark ornament. Mickey the Musician. It's a 2020 Hallmark ornament. And so I took it out of the box and I put the batteries in it and we're going to play it. I actually haven't done this yet. This is the first time, so we're going to see how this works. Pretty cool. It's battery operated, so the music is actually electronic, and your spinning just moves his arms. But this is pretty cool. I like this. That's the first time I'd heard it because I didn't put the batteries in until just now. Anyway, so there we go. But yeah, it's sad that they're erasing that song because it is a really fun song. Anyway, now on eBay for $1,000 different dollars. Retail price on this was $29.99. They're on eBay now for 10 times that for the most part. And there's not a whole lot on eBay. But these were available. These debuted in July, and they were out there were some people that could get them who had connections with the Hallmark stores. So there was like a pre-release batch that the Hallmark stores got, and they got snapped up really, really quickly. Or $100 less than a Disney After Hours ticket. Yes, Penguin Project. News Tonight is coming back October 1st. We all can't wait. Anyways, all right. So let's see. The last thing on our agenda for tonight is the talk about the furloughs and the executive salary. So I want to go on a little bit of a rant, simply because we posted about the executive salaries. Well, we posted about the cast furlough. So this was like almost a week ago, that the cast furloughs had been extended. Disney didn't announce it, but it came out through some cast member communication that a lot of the cast member furloughs were getting extended. We posted about this. Somebody came on Twitter and yelled at us and said, why are you posting this? It's painful enough to be a cast member, and why are you posting this? This is like private matter. It's not something that should be published. And so I replied to them, and I'm like, all right, well, you think it shouldn't be published. We think it should be published. We're a news outlet. People like to hear the news. It's relevant. It's relevant to a lot of people in Central Florida because so much of the Central Florida economy hinges on Disney. That if, cast furloughs at Disney are extended, that impacts a lot of other ancillary businesses and downstream businesses in the Orlando area. If there's higher unemployment, in Central Florida. It impacts a lot of other things. Other businesses aren't going to have as much revenue because there aren't as many people with expendable income. So it's all totally relevant, and this person was like offended that we posted this as a news thing, and I just thought that was kind of absurd. But anyway, but we posted it, and that came back. That news came out the same day that Disney had put out there that the executive salaries that were cut by like 20%. Or 25% were cut at the beginning of the pandemic have been restored now to their full executive salary. So it's bad enough that the cast furloughs were extended, but the fact that that news came out at the same day that Disney announced that executive salaries have been restored to their full levels was just a bit of irony that was too much for some people, and I think it was absurd that Disney has restored their executive salaries. I mean, the parks are open, sure. It's not like the company's revenue is back to pre-pandemic levels. It's clearly not the same revenue stream that they had, a year ago at this time. So with all of these cast members still on furlough, why do the executives think that their salaries should be restored to 100% when there's so many cast members whose salaries are currently at 0%? And so somehow, and this again, here we go. Obviously the end of the company that deals with employee relations in Florida had no idea that the PR department out in Burbank was going to announce that executive salaries got restored the same day they released the fact that furloughs are extended for a whole bunch of cast members. But it just makes the company look like a complete bunch of asses, really, that these two pieces of news came out at the same time. But it is what it is. I mean, this is the way. The problem is that this is the way that companies operate in this day and age, and everybody can go on and on about executive salaries and this and that, and complain about excessive executive salaries, but this is the way that all companies operate nowadays. The problem is that all of these companies are controlled by shareholders. Any company that's a public company, the shareholders don't really care about the company. The shareholders care about making money. So think of Bob Chapek. All he cares about is making money, right? So if you own shares, and not even like a person owns shares in the Disney company, like I own shares in the Disney company, but not a significant amount to make a difference. But, you have these institutional investors and funds, money market funds and investment funds that own hundreds of thousands of shares in the Walt Disney Company. They don't actually care about the Walt Disney Company. They've only bought that stock because they think it's a good investment to make their clients money. That's all. So they don't care that there's cast members being furloughed in Florida as the executive salaries are restored in California. The shareholders don't care. The problem is that the people who are running the company also don't care, because they only care that the shareholders are happy, because otherwise they're going to get kicked out. And so it's the kind of thing where if the company's a publicly held company, then no one really cares about the employees. They only care about making money. And we faulted Bob Chapek for this. It happens in all the companies. I think Bob Chapek is a particularly egregious example of this. Certainly he wasn't quite as bad as Iger was, but you look back at Michael Eisner. Michael Eisner cared about the company. He cared because he had a money man to handle the financial end of things so that he could actually care about the company. And nowadays we just don't have that. We've lost that, and it's been downhill ever since. So anyway,
I think there's a few different things that we should look at here, though, Jason, because it's
go ahead,
easy.
talk.
Like Bob Chapek is like a slow-moving, easy target, right? We can talk about that in a second. But there are a lot of executives there that aren't as high a flying person financially as Bob Iger, to a lesser extent, Bob Chapek. So if we just go through life assuming Disney's going to be fine, Disney's too big to fail, Disney's going to get through this fine, then it's okay to kind of go, yeah, what are they doing paying these people? But really, when you're fighting for the life of the company, which you can make a case that they are, based on a lot of the financial things they had to do early on in COVID-19, getting access to cash and things like that to kind of keep the company breathing, then you really can't afford, especially in front of your shareholders, to lose key executives that are kind of like frontline executives. So from that respect, I can appreciate that they're saying, all right, you're a VP of operations or whatever, we're going to restore you back to your full salary. You've been burning the midnight oil trying to keep the company alive for the last 5-6 months. At the same time, they need to be aware of perception. And they are aware of perception because they kind of had this cute little ruse that somehow Bob Iger, he was forfeiting his base salary. Bob Chapek was forfeiting his base salary, or maybe it was 50% of his base salary. The base salary for a CEO of a company this size is nothing. So if you're a normal person with a normal job and your base salary is, I don't know, $100,000 a year or $50,000 a year, you might get a bonus, a couple grand every year. Who knows? These guys, though, their base salary is a tiny portion of their total compensation. So Bob Chapek's contract was, I believe his base salary was $2.5 million a year. That's an impressive amount of cash. He cuts that, let's say he cuts that in half, I think is what he did. Who cares? Because also in his contract, he is entitled to a bonus that is to be not less than 300% of his contracted base salary. So no matter how much he's taking home right now as a base salary, he cannot by contract make less than $7.5 million in a bonus, and their bonuses exceed that by tremendous amounts. Bob Iger in 2018 made something like $65 million, a little bit more than that. I think the following year he made like $48 million, and that was kind of like a big reduction in his salary because of some bonuses and things. So this is not like you and me where you only get a bonus if you do a good job. He is entitled to that $7.5 million bonus on top of his base salary as a minimum, no matter what he does. So him foregoing his salary is sort of an empty gesture. They probably should have kept that ruse alive and maybe used some of that money to still keep some of their key executives that are below the CEO, to kind of keep them around. But, keep this ruse up that he doesn't have a base salary, or that he's given up half his base salary or whatever, because at the end of the day, that's chump change to these guys.
Jason,
go ahead, Axel.
When we talk about Disney, we talk about the parks. We talk about what we see next door. First of all, Disney is way bigger than that. If you see the numbers they've done with Disney Plus, it's immense. It's not only the parks. Right now, Bob Chapek, CEO of the whole Walt Disney Company. So it's not only the parks. So you cannot really compare it to if he had only that part, then you would say like, okay, this is weird. But the parks are only a small part of what the whole Walt Disney Company is. The whole Walt Disney Company isn't doing that well on the cruises or even their movie releases, but Disney Plus is doing good. They have tons of other things. If you go Google what Disney has acquired over the last years, consumer product, there's so much stuff that I was amazed to see, like, whoa, is this Disney? Disney owns that as well? Like, it's a huge chart. You for those who haven't seen it, go look it up. It's enormous. He's at the head of that all. So yeah, the money from there does not only come from the parks, and it feels very far from what we see here in the midst of theme park worlds in Orlando, because like everything is here, and then the only thing you see is longer furloughs at Disney, 1,000 jobs less at Lowe's hotels, so many people that lost their jobs at Universal. Marriott is furloughing people. Rosen, a hotel company, has furloughed so many of his people. It's everywhere, and it's everybody, and especially Orlando is bleeding. But then it's like, okay, I mean, the company isn't doing that bad. Look at the shares, and as you said, if the shareholders are happy, then company is happy, and then people still want to invest, and that goes up. I think Disney is definitely not the best company to work for. There's other big companies that do take care of their employees. Disney, unfortunately, not one of them, although when I have this discussion with a cast member living in our neighborhood, they're going to say like, well, you know, when they furloughed me, at least I could go and get my money from the state of Florida, get my money from the United States of America, and at least I got more than what I did on my regular job. Those things come to an end, so that's fun for the first 2 or 3 months, but those come to an end as well. But it's like a really weird discussion between those employees of Disney who are fans, and where whatever you say is going to be untrue, and no, that's not true, and they do respect us and they do treat us well. And then you have the other side, whereas I was like, well, no, they kicked us out without anything because I can get support. I have nowhere to go, and now I'm living in my mother's basement somewhere in the middle of I don't know where because I had to leave Orlando because it's too expensive and I don't have a job.
Yeah, no, very true. And so I just want to bring up one thing that Rob Bazemore said in the chat. He said, you're totally looking at the wrong way. Employees weren't not getting paid because Disney couldn't afford to pay them. They are furloughed because there isn't enough work for them to do. So, Rob, I'd like to direct your attention to Exhibit A, which is Universal Studios right up the road. They continued to pay all of their employees while the parks were shut down. They did not furlough anyone while the parks were shut down. So obviously there was not enough work for any of them to do with the parks being closed, but Disney or Universal continued to pay them, whereas Disney did not. So that's what I'm talking about when I talk about whether the company actually cares about their employees or not. And so, you know, obviously at some later point after the parks opened and Universal kind of figured out you know, what things were going to look like going forward for the short-term future, they ended up having to furlough people. But at the beginning, they did not furlough anyone. So it has nothing to do with the fact that Disney didn't have things for people to do, because Universal didn't either. And furthermore, there was actually plenty of stuff that Disney could have had their cast members do, like maintenance maybe, I don't know, like construction at Epcot maybe, like all those things stopped happening while the parks were closed, and maybe they should have kept going with them. Maybe that would have been a good idea to do more construction and things while no one was there. Which would have helped the poor workers to get paid while everyone else was, you know, furloughed. But it also would have made a better in-park experience for the guests when they finally came back, that things weren't broken down, that the giant walls of Future World were further along than they would have been otherwise. So there's a lot of things that... yeah, I know the furloughed employees aren't qualified to do the construction, but they didn't do any construction anyway. So they essentially furloughed all the construction. The construction people also aren't employees; they're contractors. But they also halted all those contracts, which means those contractors didn't get paid when it would have absolutely made sense to pay and get some of that work done while the parks were closed.
Now, Jason, I have a question.
Yep.
Sorry, I didn't want to interrupt you, but before you get too far down the road, I think that Universal owned by Comcast. I think they're they have a lot more revenue than Disney, and maybe not a lot more, but I think they're bigger than Disney, and a lot more of a higher percentage of their revenue didn't dry up. I think it was easier for them to probably keep people on.
Oh, absolutely. I don't disagree.
I imagine they saw a glut of revenue coming in, owning all these cable companies when people are having to work from home and get better internet speed, or get more.
I don't disagree at all.
But then when things came around and push came to shove and everyone came back to the parks, they had no problem jettisoning employees. So I don't know that they're the guys in the white hat on this. I think they're just they just happen to go about it in a different manner. I don't think that they care more or less about their employees necessarily. I just think it was a function of them being in a position revenue-wise to weather the storm maybe a little bit better than Disney, just due to their structure and where their revenue comes from as a corporation.
Yeah, I totally get what you're saying, Eric. I'm not, and as much as I kind of maybe sounded like Universal was the guys, saving the day. I just think that they made a decision early on that was very employee friendly, and Disney did not. And now they're all in the same boat, but at the beginning, Universal clearly did something that they didn't have to do, that other companies weren't doing, and that was, a nice gesture towards their employees. So no, they're not scot-free. They're not the perfect epitome of corporate citizenship either, but they're better than Disney. That's kind of what I'm saying. Universal delayed the inevitable, right? And Disney jumped on the inevitable as soon as they could to save money.
Well, it's also possible to say that at the time, Disney just thought they were going to have to fight for the survival of the company. I mean, it's very possible that they were in a precarious position. They had to go out and solicit cash infusion. It's possible that they were making these just fighting tooth and nail to keep the company alive, as absurd as that sounds. But I think that they have to operate from that worst case scenario and think, man, we actually could go bankrupt.
I think you're absolutely right. I think the problem, and this just essentially turned out to be bad timing, because Disney just spent a buttload of cash and debt to acquire Fox for way more money than they initially wanted to, and then this hit. So it really was just bad timing. Disney would not be in anywhere near a precarious financial situation as they are right now had they not bought Fox. So that's, I think, one overarching thing to keep in mind when you're talking about this, is that Disney's absolutely in a much more precarious financial situation than Comcast is. Not only because Comcast is more diversified and has other revenue streams that are very healthy and increasing, whereas Disney kind of doesn't, but also Disney just took on a lot of debt to acquire Fox when that was maybe something that they didn't need to do. So
it's the thing with Disney especially, and that's not even talking about the money. When this all happened, it was just painful to see, and I'm not saying it could have been avoided because you have a global pandemic, but then getting all those college programs, all those international programs out of their housing that is provided by Disney, where they still pay quite some money for, and all of a sudden it was like, yeah, guys, we're closing, so get out. Sorry, where are my manners? Please get out. And then all those guys were there not knowing where to go, and all of a sudden they were on the street. So I think money-wise, yes, but Disney is such a big company, especially Walt Disney World here has so many people living on their premises, having this college program, having those internationals over. And then I had people that had to go back to France, not knowing, like, will we ever come back? Will I ever see it again? Just being ripped away from everything here because they had nowhere to live. It was that easy.
Yeah,
and
it's the way the CP thing went down was inappropriate. Yeah, the CPs and internationals, that was inappropriate because they are probably some of your cheapest labor. And I don't know, I'm guessing between a third and a half of their income goes right back to you in terms of leasing them a place to live at Vista Way or one of these other places. You would think they could have let them hang out a little longer and figure things out. This impacted a lot of people quickly. Some people got off, some people got lucky, some people didn't. It's the same thing with the way that the unemployment system in Florida worked. But yeah, I recall that where they kind of said, all right, you have until Friday or whatever to get out. I think that was wrong, and they probably should have set something up to help get people home, especially internationals. There were people that were stranded here. I know where I live, there were a lot of Italians who work for Patina, who now, granted, that's not Disney, but they were kind of stranded for a while. And there are internationals, to my knowledge, that are actually still stranded here.
And then
I think you're right.
To compare it with Universal, and that's like the whole main thing. And every time we talk about Universal, and even my wife like mocks me because I'm saying it again, at least they tried. So when they closed, it was like, guys, we need to close, go home, read a book, but we'll still pay you 80% of your wages. Of course, nobody's going to say like, oh, that's a bad idea, I don't want that. Because when they closed, it was like for 2 weeks. Nobody knew what was going to happen. Everybody had like this little note on the door, like, hey, we'll be back in 2 weeks. This virus will be gone. Nobody knew that it was going to be 3 months. But at least, again, Universal did try to give their employees like, hey, you guys, we understand it's hard for you, it's hard for us, just go home. Disney was more like, well, here we go, and now we'll make a system that we automatically enroll you to get support from the state of Florida. And then that system like broke every once in a while.
That system was broke before the pandemic.
Yeah, and I mean, for some of them, it meant that they were getting more money than their colleagues would at Universal, but others weren't getting anything, or were denied, or were not long enough in the country. And then when you look at Disney, and that's a nice thing about Disney, Disney has a really diverse crowd. You see a lot of people, you hear a lot of languages. Not everybody is entitled to those benefits. And then there's a lot of defending Disney and like, yeah, but they furloughed, but the state of Florida gave them money. And there's a lot of people having nothing. And that's why on this channel, we did the cast member pantry, because up until this day, there's people still not knowing where to go, living in their car and hoping they will get food tomorrow. And I know it's not Disney's fault. It's still, this pandemic was so heavy on this company. But then knowing that the big boss gets his 25% back, and I mean, it's just from $1 million, that's still $250,000. If he could put that into the cast member pantry, they had a nice feast. They could get food for quite some time.
Do you guys think also the timing, other than the timing we discussed with the Fox acquisition, also with the shutdown coming right with the end of Q1, right around the corner, in the end of March, had something to do with that? They just had to jettison as much of this as they could before the end of the quarter, try to have a good report, try to keep confidence from the shareholders, and keep good credit going, so they could, I don't know how many $1 billion loans they took out. It was a couple of them, right?
Yeah, I don't I don't know that they focused on the quarterly numbers that much. I mean, I guess it would make sense that if you could put all of the coronavirus problems into Q2 and still make Q1 look good, there was some benefit to that. But, and like you said, that's when they thought it was going to be like 2 weeks, not 3 months. You know, maybe, but I don't know how much. I don't know how much of it was that. But maybe that was part of it. But I think kind of the overall thing is that, you know, as Axel mentioned, the college program and the international cast members really got screwed. Like, they got totally screwed. They can't even collect unemployment. They got sent back home. Half of them couldn't get back home right away. It was you know, it was a mess. It was absolutely a mess. So yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's hard to say. It's hard to say about the quarterly number simply because it's hard to say exactly what they expected in terms of how long the shutdown would last. But assuming it was expected to be a short thing that was a couple weeks, then maybe the quarterly numbers played into it. I don't know.
Yeah, and I'm just of the belief that Bob Iger knew it wasn't going to be a quick thing. You know, Bob Iger.
It seemed like it. Right. It seemed like he wanted to.
It seemed like he knew something that he was a little bit ahead of it, the rest of us figuring out how serious this was going to be and how long lasting this might be. He's a sharp guy, and it's possible, it's likely that he, you know, had a good idea about that.
And it's still very serious. So that's why I think that even if, to go back to our first discussion or second discussion, with reopening and upping the capacity through time, and that we're now at this point where Florida government says, like, okay, well, you guys, you can go and then up your capacity. I'm not sure if a lot of parks are going to willing to take that risk, besides Fun Spot and all those things. Because Disney needs to be careful. Disney doesn't need a positive COVID case in his parks. That's the worst that can happen. So I'm not sure if they will jump on the first opportunity to put the parks back at 50%, where they're at 25 right now, maybe. So I definitely don't think they will jump at the first opportunity. I think they will definitely be well-measured decisions, because you cannot have a positive case, you cannot have an outbreak on your land. That's not okay. And Disney knows that. And Universal knows that.
And I think if you look back to what happened in March, right before the park closed, I mean, we had a picture from the last fireworks show right before the parks closed and how packed it was. And, you know, that picture kind of went viral and it ended up on Conan or something, and then Abigail Disney tweeted about it. So that was a really bad look, and clearly they don't want to have something like that happen again, where they increase capacity and then, you know, we're there and we take a picture of something going on that's like no social distancing at all, and it looks really bad. I honestly think that it's more the appearance then, because it would be really, really hard to track a COVID case back to Disney, like specifically. So I think it's much more the appearance of safety than it is actual safety, and we talked about this months ago. I think what Disney's trying to do is project the appearance of safety, because they know it would be nearly impossible to prove that a coronavirus case originated on Disney property.
To talk about that picture you are talking about, we were there that last night. We were more at the site of the Crystal Palace because we didn't want to go into the crowds. The sad part is that almost everybody in that picture and in the way that we saw it were those college program kids and international programs. They knew they had to leave in a few days, not knowing if they would ever see each other again. And that doesn't make it good. That doesn't, like, but it's okay, no, you won't see each other again. Oh, then you can do it. It's only a pandemic. At that moment in time, it was not. People would not see it as the thing it is today. It was okay. It's dangerous, but we need to pay attention. I remember in the beginning of the pandemic, them saying like, "Oh, masks is not a good thing to do," because they learn new things about this virus every day, and now it's airborne and it's you have to wear a mask. In the beginning, when you're there and you're gonna miss your friends, and you don't know if you're gonna see them again. I mean, that was not a smart reaction, but a very human reaction.
Not a
especially
surprising
because
reaction.
they were all there, so it wasn't surprising at all.
Yep. Agreed. Somebody asked in the chat a little while ago about third-party pavilions at Epcot and whether they're operated by international cast members or actually third parties. So, for example, the restaurants in the Italy Pavilion are all operated by Patina, but the beer garden in Germany is operated by Disney cast members. I think the restaurants in Mexico are operated by a third party. So there, and like the restaurants in France are operated by a third party, but like the Rose and Crown and Le Cellier are operated by Disney. So it varies. It varies all over the place.
This might be anecdotal, Jason. Sorry.
Yep.
This might just be anecdotal. We went to the opening of the reopening of Teppan Edo in Japan last week, and our server had been employed in the Mexico Pavilion and had been shuffled over to there. So I don't know what her employment her employer was, but I know that
Japan is also third party.
They're shuffling around people. To cover all the positions.
Yeah, I think all of Japan is one pavilion that I think is completely operated by third party. I don't think there's anything in Japan that's operated by Disney.
Don't they own all the restaurants too?
Mitsukoshi operates everything in Japan. I absolutely. All right, let's give a shout out to Wigs because somebody in the chat asked why they should join Wigs. Wigs,
Jason, why should they? There you go. I was going to say, why
that's a
should
great
they
question.
Become Wigs? That is a great question, Jason. Why should they become a Wigs member?
They should become a Wigs member. So Wigs is not a hairpiece. It's the WDWNT Interglobe Society. It's an acronym that contains another acronym. And if that's not ridiculous enough, Wigs members get all kinds of bonus material that the general public does not get. So Wigs members get access, they get early access to podcasts. They get post shows after WDW News Tonight and Park Center almost every week. There's a brand new video series called Detailed, starring Tom Coilis, where he walks around the parks and talks in depth about the details that make the Disney park special. That's a Wigs only show that comes out, and you have to be a Wigs member to access that show.
$7
we also have that show's at the $7 level. There's also a Discord channel that's exclusively for Wigs members. So there's all kinds of stuff that Wigs members get at as little as $2. You get the post shows and a bunch of other things at $2. Some of the shows, like the Detailed show, is at the $7 level. But if you're interested, go over to patreon.com/WDWNT and check out all of the details there. If you have any questions about Wigs before you join, you can certainly email us and let us know. Thanks to I'm Just a Cricket for the super chat, $14.99 super chat, saying Wigs pays for Tom to stay in Disney hotels every day for the last 2 months, which is somewhat true because Tom's been in Disney hotels. I mean, Can you get wigs in pounds instead of dollars as it messes up the exchange rate? I'm not sure. That's a really good question. We could certainly look at that. That's something I can look into. But yeah, so as you probably know, Tom has been in Disney hotels for quite a bit over the past couple of months because, according to the rules, you need a Disney Park Pass to get into the parks, and the easiest way to get Disney Park Passes to the parks is to stay at a Disney hotel. Now, there are some people out there that break the rules because they found workarounds where they don't actually have to pay for a hotel stay to get the park passes. And so a lot of the unscrupulous bloggers have been doing this. But as WDW&T, the largest Disney fan site in the world, we absolutely want to do things by the rules. And so Tom has been booking hotels for the past 2 months to get park passes so that Tom and our reporters can get into the parks, so like Kevin. So Tom and Kevin and so our other reporters are all getting into the parks using park passes that are booked with legitimate Disney hotel stays. That's just us wanting to follow the rules. Not saying anything about any other blogs that might be mentioned in the chat right now by Penguin Project, but another super chat from I'm Just a Cricket. Not unscrupulous, can't go to the parks I paid for. Yes, so that's very true. But anyway, so that's, that's a large portion. So obviously, between booking hotels and spending my DVC points and renting other DVC points to get all of these, reservations so that we can get park passes to continue to bring you the news, that certainly costs a lot of money, and so Wiggs helps pay for that. Certainly Wiggs helps pay for Tom's scrumptious meals at the parks that he reviews, and we post reviews and pictures and everything and tell you what to eat when you go to the parks and what to stay away from. So yeah, there's a lot of benefits to joining Wiggs. Kate, people are talking about Tom and Kate, and Kate's not Tom's girlfriend. I'm not going to say her name because we're not supposed to say her name on the air. She cannot be seen or heard or talked about.
No, she's only known as the mysterious Canadian girlfriend.
The mysterious Canadian girlfriend. But anyway. So anyway, that's Wiggs helps support WDW&T in all sorts of ways, but you also get a really great bunch of benefits. At the higher levels, we have higher levels above $7. There's a $23 and a Club $33 level. Those levels also get core bucks, which are used to spend on prizes in our prize wall, which is at my.wdwnt.com. So whenever Tom goes to Japan and brings back really cool things, or we have other one-of-a-kind sort of souvenir items that we find and come across. A long time ago when we first started Wiggs, the Club 33 Wiggs members would get stuff in the mail every month. But when Wiggs grew too big, that was kind of problematic because we didn't have enough things. And so now what we do is we give out core bucks, which are sort of like arcade coupons that you can spend on our prize wall to order prizes, things that you want, as opposed to what we have that we can mail out to you. So that's the Club 33 level. I think we have over 200 Wiggs members at this point. I think it says it if you go to patreon.com/WDWNT, it'll show you how many current Wiggs members there are in the total. Can I donate points to charity? Bill, that's a great question. One of the things that we might do, since you mentioned that, is come up with a way for Wiggs members to donate their core bucks during our charity initiative, during our marathon show in November that benefits Toys for Tots. So 352 patrons. Wow. Okay. I haven't looked at that page recently enough. I thought it was around 200, but 352 Wigs members overall. So yeah, that's a good idea. If I don't figure out a way to do that, remind me when we get to the charity show in November, because that's a great idea to be able to donate your core bucks for charity. Anyway, I think that's Eric and Axel. Do you guys want to say anything else before we close out today's show?
What can I say after such the Wick speech? What do you want? What do you want to hear? Like, this was the best Wick speech I've heard ever. So I want to sign up and become a Wix member or a higher tier.
I'll pat Axel on the back. I'll pat you on the back, Axel. Axel produced and directed the first exclusive show, detailed, and it was fantastic. It's a quick watch, but it's really informative and well done. And thanks, Axel. It's worth checking out, guys. So if you want to join a $7 level, or you'll see detailed. And the first episode dropped. What was it, last week, Axel?
It was last week, and we're filming the next one. I think the coming week or the week after that. Can I give a hint? It's going to be at the Magic Kingdom.
Sure, you can give a hint.
It's going to be at the Magic Kingdom, and there might be food involved. And it's one of my personal favorites, so that's why I made Tom go, so I can just go with him.
And make him buy you lunch. That's a good plan. I like that.
I would have, if I could, it would have been Trader Sam's, but it's closed, so I'm crying.
Yeah. All right. So now with our we have over 400 people. We almost hit 500 people watching today. So thank you all very much for watching. I have to bring up my favorite Axel quote from the chat today. Is that one time a snake bit Axel, and after 5 days of agonizing pain, the snake died. So, you guys are absolutely insane. You guys in the chat are absolutely insane. But anyway, thank you so much for watching. Thank you, everybody. Please, if you haven't already, hit the thumbs up, hit the like button to help us out on YouTube. Hitting that like button means that our videos get pushed up higher in search results, so more people can see us. Thank you to Axel and Eric for being on the show tonight. Thank you very much to Kevin for running things tonight and popping in as a disembodied voice to talk about the Mexico Pavilion at Epcot when we were talking about that. And I will say, I guess, we'll see you next week. So next week is Labor Day weekend here in the U.S. We will have a show. I know people were asking if Cosmic Reed is going to have a show next week on Labor Day. I'm not sure, but tune in tomorrow night, and I'm sure they'll let you know. But thanks, everybody, for watching. Thanks for hitting the like button. And keep checking out WWNT.com all this week for news, and we'll be back next Sunday night. Same bat time, same bat channel. Once again here on Pressing Issues. Good night, everybody.